Okay, thank you. Salam, everyone. So yes, it's been already a journey for us, but we haven't even started Salah. All of this was the preparation, but we did actually finish the preparation stage. So I call that section 1 of the course. And today well, I'll start by just, I have a couple of slides which summarizes it. We will send the slides over as well. And it's like a preparation procedure. So it just puts together a summary of each of the steps that we discussed and the instructions that we gave to follow. And I hope, inshallah, you feel that, you know, it was a practical focus. That's the most important thing for me, because I hear a lot of talking, but not a lot of people telling you what to do, how to do it spiritually. Insights, which we need to know in order to then progress to the rest of the actual Salah. So I need to cover some of those so that we have a good, at least basic understanding. It's not meant to be a course in Arfan. Actually, I plan to do that. Maybe we do it after. But I don't mean this course to be Arfan course. It's meant to be Salah focus. So it will only be like an introduction level, enough for us to get the basic concepts that we will use for the rest of the course. Okay. So if I you should put up the slides here. Hopefully you can see them now. So we're on section 2. We're actually starting the journey. But before that, just as a quick recap of what we did. So we started, this is our preparation procedure, okay? So we started with our focus on concentration and presence, hudur, and we talked about the 2 different types of meditation that we learned to ground ourselves in the body and develop concentration. Then we moved on to tahara, and we talked about the inner dimension of tahara, what to do internally as you go through each of the steps, purifying the internal space of consciousness. So that's the second part. And then we came to the Qibla, turning away from the world and towards the one, making the whole world disappear. We then went to the Adhan, hearing the invitation and acknowledging each of the lines there. Then the Niyyah and the Ikhlas, which is critical for Qurba. And then we covered what I call the standing at the door, the test of your Ikhlas to see whether you enter the front door or the back door, so to speak. And then we talked about the takbirat, removing the veils and acknowledgement that the absolute cannot be described. So this is a 2-page summary that can be helpful as a preparation procedure for us, okay? And on this diagram, which is like a roadmap for this course, which we haven't looked at in detail yet. We'll look at it more as we go along, but we're really in this bottom right part of the screen, which was all these preparation steps. And now we start the actual Salah itself, and there's a lot of Arfani concepts here, which is exactly what we're going into, okay? Now, what I'm going to start with is just a quick summary of the 3 different things that we're going to discuss in Arfan, okay? In today's session. Hopefully we have time to cover.
Sorry, Han, can you make it full page, please?
It's not full page?
No.
Um, let me see. Is this better?
Yes. Okay.
That's better? Okay. All right. And so the first thing that we'll do is we'll talk about understanding Allah in more detail. Okay. So Irfan, you can say, is actually the science of Tawheed. That's what it is. It's really going into Tawheed in much, much more detail than what we are traditionally taught. And so and when we talk about Tawheed in Irfan, it's all in the framework about wujud, understanding being, existence, wujud. And so we'll talk about the different levels of wujud. The next thing that we'll do is talk about the stages of the spiritual journey itself. So what it is for us, what we're going to go through. And there's two key milestones that we will talk about called FANA and BAQA. And these are two very important milestones on the journey, and we'll talk a little bit about those. All of this is very relevant for Salah, that's why we're doing it. And then the third is looking at the idea of tajalliyat, okay? Different ways that Allah reveals himself to us. There are different types of tajalliyat, and each of these is experienced in Salah. So that's why we need to have an idea of what they're about, okay? So that's what we're hoping to cover today. If it spills over, we may need to go into finish it off in the next session. But I'll start with the first part, okay? This understanding al-haqiqa al-ilahiyya. And I'll just warn you, this is a little bit complex. So it can be a bit difficult to grasp. You'll see that I put it on 2 slides, okay? The first slide is the more complete version, and then the second slide is a kind of simplified version. Don't worry about too much of the complexity. Just try to get the basic idea from this, okay? So let's start, okay? So these are the different levels of divine reality, okay? Al-haqiqa al-ilahiyya. And there are different ways or different schemes. Some people talk about 2 levels, some talk about 3 levels, 5 levels. There are different ways of dividing it or explaining it. But this is the most kind of comprehensive way. And then we'll look at a more simplified one, okay? And in fact, what we'll do is work from the bottom up, okay? From the bottom of this slide upwards, because the bottom is where is more familiar to us, and then the higher levels become more abstract and difficult to grasp, okay? This diagram hopefully can help us as well to understand what we're trying to explain here, okay? So in Irfan, we talk about Allah in different levels, okay? Different hadarat, they're called presences, different levels of presence or different levels of being. And it starts at the level of, not starts from the highest, I'm working from the bottom up, okay? We'll start with something called al-hadara al-wahidiyya, okay? Al-wahidiyya. And here, it's in this diagram, it's represented by this larger circle with all the lines in it, okay? That's the wahidiyya level. Now, what this level is, this is the level of understanding Allah in terms of his asma wa sifat, okay? So this is the level of the attributes and the names of Allah. This is what we're familiar with, okay? This is Allah manifesting itself having different attributes, okay? Different attributes. So you can think of each of these parts on the circle, think of them as each one of them is one of the sifat, right? One of the asma. I should fill that in actually. Next time when I do this diagram, I'll write all the different names. You can have 99 of them. This is the level of wahidiyya. Now, at this level, of course, we're talking about Allah, one God, one Allah, but this one Allah has multiple attributes, right? So already you see there is a tension between oneness, yeah, wahda, and kathra. And all of this structure is about this, progressing between different levels of wahda versus kathra. Okay, so here there is clearly wahda. We're talking about ilahun wahid, right? Ilahun wahid, but there is a kathra in it because we have multiple sifat. Okay, so at this level of wujud, there is some kind of conditioning, okay, limits that are defining wujud in different ways. So what I mean is, for example, qudra. Okay, qudra is one of the sifat, and it is a form of being. Okay, it's one way that being, wujud, can be manifested, right? He can show his wujud through qudra. Same thing for ilm, same thing for rahmah. Each one of these is wujud with some kind of a condition. Condition meaning that qudra is conditioned by what qudra means, and that condition is not the same as ilm. Ilm is a different concept. So it is the same wujud, but with a different condition becomes ilm. Same wujud with a different condition becomes rahmah. Okay, so it's wujud muqayyad. Muqayyad by being a certain type of wujud, as it appears in the sifat. Okay, so that's wahidiyya, and that's what we're very familiar with when we say Asma Allah al-Husna. This is what we understand Allah. But this is just one level of reality. Okay, the next level up is this second circle. Okay, if you look carefully at this diagram, okay, there's two inner circles, right? There's the inner circle, and then there's a circle around it. Yes, so this middle circle, the middle one, is called al-hadara al-ahadiyya. Okay, so now we're moving from al-wahid to al-ahad. Yeah, qul huwa Allahu ahad. Now, what's the difference here? Now, here, in a way, what you can think of it as is that all of these sifat and asma have become merged into one reality, one essence. Okay, and at this level, there is no kathra. Okay, this is the difference. You cannot differentiate. You cannot. ما في تميز. ما تقدر تتميز بين صفة وصفة. They are all one حقيقة, and that's called أحدية. Okay, وحدة محضة. وجود مطلق. Okay, so that's what we mean by ahadiyya. That's another level of oneness. It's a more intense level because all of these realities are being merged into one. Okay, so that's the second one. I'm hearing some background noise, by the way. Can everyone make sure you're on mute? Thank you. And then at the highest level, okay, that's the innermost circle, okay, we come to the essence of Allah, Dhat Allah, okay, Dhat al-Wujud. And at this level, we cannot say anything about it. Yani, in an ahadiyya level, there is, at least you can say there is a oneness, there's a wahda, okay? At the level of the Dhat, we cannot say anything at all. It is just pure being, okay? without any kind of conditioning, any kind of differentiation, any kind of limitation is not there. It is absolute, absolute. It's not limited by anything, okay? It's a very difficult idea to understand. That's the whole point. It is not knowable, but at least we can understand that it is there at its highest level, okay? At this point, ليس كمثله شيء, there's nothing like it, but you can basically think of it as pure wujud, okay? So that's the full description. In a way, though, you can simplify it, okay? And for our purposes in the Salah, we can simplify it with this version where we're basically only looking at wahidiyya and ahadiyya, okay? So similar idea, but you don't need to go beyond that. You can just think of wahidiyya, where there is individual sifat and asma, and then where there is pure wahda, pure oneness, where there is not even any trace of sifat. And that's what we talked about in the last session, where we said kamal ikhlas lahu nafi as-sifat anhu, right? Removing all the sifat, because essentially at that level you cannot distinguish one sifa from another sifa. It's pure oneness at that level. Okay, so I know there's quite a lot of information there, especially if it's new to you, but we can discuss as we go along. And each step of the Salah, when we talk about each of these levels, we will go into more detail as well. Okay, so this is just giving you an overview of the idea. So next we come to the stages of the journey, okay? There are many steps. They call them manazil as-sa'irin, okay? The stages of the seekers who are traveling on this journey. I'm only going to focus on two very important stages, FANA and BAQA, okay? And we start with FANA. So in FANA, it is al-FANA fillah. Okay, we will see that baqa is baqa billah, but fana is fana fillah. Okay, now this is actually the top of the mountain, so to speak. When we are journeying on our way to Allah, this is the highest point you can reach. It is not the end of the journey, but it is the end of this very important stage when we are moving towards Allah. That's why it says it's the culmination of the journey to Allah. Okay, at this level, essentially what happens is you lose awareness of anything other than Allah. You cannot see, cannot experience anything other than Allah, including yourself. You cannot see yourself. You cannot experience you as a separate individual the way that we do normally. Okay, so it's a loss of identity. All right, and in fact, there's even levels within FANA. At the highest level, there's FANA anil FANA, meaning that you're not even aware that you are in FANA. Even that level of awareness has gone. You're completely, your awareness, your consciousness is completely absorbed into that oneness. Okay, now it's not the final step. We will have a return part of the journey. That's what BAQA is about. But at this point, this is what it's about. And it's a very difficult, complicated subject to describe. The Rafa have a very difficult time trying to explain what this experience is actually like. Okay, but this is a couple of descriptions here you see on the page. It says فناء حدوده, he's talking about السالك, right, the seeker. فناء حدوده وقيوده وخصائصه من بعد ما يغفل عن كل العالم. فتنتهي كل خصائصه الخاصة به ليبقى وجوده صرف تعلق بالحق ومرتبطا بالحق. Okay, so you're losing anything that you currently feel that makes you as an individual, as a separate being. All of it gets dissolved in that awareness of Allah. Nothing else is there. Okay, and in the Farsi poetry, Mahmoud Shabastari says it in a beautiful way, because it's a world of paradox here. It's just very almost confusing to know what you are, what's happening, where are you? And he says, چه میگویم که هست این نکته باریک، شب روشن میان روز تاریک. Okay, so he's saying, what can I say about this? It's so subtle, so daqiq, so latif, so difficult to know what's happening. It's like a bright night. Okay, so think about that. It's a paradox. Okay, it's a bright night. All right, and then that bright night is in the middle of a dark daylight. Okay, dark daylight, روز تاریک. And it's just trying to convey to you how intense this level of experience is, and how difficult it is to put into words. But in a way, one way to understand it, it's like you are looking at the sun. Okay, if you look directly at the sun, and if you were to travel towards the sun, what would happen? The sun is so bright that it will make everything go dark, right? It's a beautiful way to try to imagine it. It's dark from the sheer intensity of light. It will blind you. And that's why I put this picture here. It will blind you if you see it. And it's that you've become so close to Allah that you cannot see anything. And Shabastari calls it in another way. He says it is nur siyah, okay, black light. It's just so amazing to try to even understand it. Black light. How can light be black? But it's just their way of trying to say it's bright because, of course, it's wujud, it's Allah. But in a way, it creates a kind of darkness. Everything else disappears. You get lost and blinded by that light. It's beautiful. And yeah, and so that's what FANA is about. And I thought I would just, well, let's think, how do we get there? That becomes the next question, right? How do we get there? And what does it take to get there? So here what they say is that basically what you need is concentration and love. It's all about love. That intensity of love is what will take you there. Let me see if I can share. I wanted to just put something on for you guys to show perhaps what this is like. Let me try and see if I can make this work. Are you guys with me? You can hear me okay? Everything okay? All right. So let me share this. All right. I hope you can hear me okay as well. I'm going to put
We
this.
can hear you okay. Yeah, don't worry.
Yes, hear you okay? All right. So let me put this on. So listen to this. It's a beautiful clip, very short, and then we'll talk about it.
جملگی در حکم سه پروانه در جهان عاشقان افسانه اولی خود را به شمع نزدیک کرد گفت حال من یافتم معنای عشق دومی نزدیک شعله بار زد گفت من سوختم در سوز عشق سومی خود داخل آتش فکند آری آری این بود معنای
Okay. So this is from, you've heard me say many times, Attar is my favorite poet of all time, and that's one of his lines. So he's describing three butterflies. The first comes near to a candle and says, aha, I've discovered the meaning of love. Okay. The second one starts fluttering his wings, comes very close to the flame itself, and says, oh, I've been burned by the fire of love. But the third one comes and throws himself into that fire. And the answer comes, yes, yes, this is the meaning of love. This is the meaning of love. And notice that the third one doesn't say anything. In total silence, he just throws himself into that fire. And this is what it takes for FANA. Okay, this is how to achieve FANA. It's not a case of you continuing to exist and be a person who is doing ibadah and who loves Allah, me loving you. It's not like that. It's much more intense than that. It's you throw this person, this individual, this one that wants to be close to Allah, wants to be accepted by Allah. No, this is a different level of relationship where there's no room for two. There's no room for two. This is how close you want to become, where you are not there anymore. You're not there anymore. Only the one is there. Okay. So this is FANA, and it is achievable in Salah as well. That's part of what we will be seeing. Okay. All right, that's FANA. Then we come to BAQA, because believe it or not, that's not the end of it. Even after you've eliminated this separate self and have completely burned in this love, there is another stage that must be taken, and that's baqa. And here it's baqa billah, because now you come back to the world, because in FANA there is no world. There is no awareness of a world. There's no awareness of yourself, let alone a world. Now, you cannot stay there forever. You have to come back to the world. And coming back to the world means becoming self-conscious again. So you are aware of yourself, you're aware of the world, but your vision now has become completely transformed because you have seen the trueness that flows through all wujud. And so the one who has reached this level sees oneness in the multiplicity of the world and sees multiplicity in the oneness at the same time. Okay, kathra fil wahda and wahda fil kathra at all times. This is the insan kamil. And they come back to then guide us and become mukammil and show us the way to get there. So I put this picture of a phoenix that's known to be the one who arises from the ashes of the fire and has a different life. Now he is a godly person, sees Allah in everything without any obstruction at all. And the two hadiths I have here help to explain this. There's the very famous hadith Qudsi, where it says, إن العبد ليتقرب إلي بالنافلة حتى أحبه فإذا أحببته كنت سمعه الذي يسمع به وبصره الذي يبصر به ولسانه الذي ينطق به ويده التي يبطش بها إن دعاني أجبته وإن سألني أعطيته. So you see that at this level, the abd is no longer himself anymore. His sam' is sam' Allah. His basar is basar Allah. Yeah. كنت سمعه الذي يسمع به وبصره الذي يبصر به. Everything he does, it's actually Allah doing it. Nothing is left of the old self. It has been completely transformed. And Imam Ali has the beautiful hadith. He says, ما رأيت شيئا إلا ورأيت الله قبله وبعده ومعه وفيه. So this is the description of BAQA. At this point, there is no more obstruction. There is no, yes, I know, I believe in Allah and I see the world. It is all one without any obstruction. One way to try to understand that is if you look at a page of writing from a book, okay? Any page with writing on it, okay? There are different ways to see the page and the ink on the page, okay? When we normally look at the page, what we see is words and sentences and paragraphs, right? That's what we focus on. We see these words and we have meanings that arise in our minds, okay? That's one way to look at it. But actually, if you look at it in a different way, what's actually there? What's actually there is only ink. It's only ink that actually exists, right? So if you look at those words in that way, you don't pay attention to the shape of this letter or this word, you just see the ink, right? That's another way to look at it. The third way is to be able to see it both at the same time. You can see the words, you're reading the words, but now that I've drawn your attention to it, you see that, yes, these words are words, but they're just ink. I can see the ink and I can see the words at the same time, okay? This describes the stages of suluk. At the beginning, most of the time, we see just the words. That's like us seeing the world of objects. We just see objects, okay? That's what we see, individual forms and objects. But the next level, which is FANA, you lose sight of the words. You don't pay attention to the words or not. In FANA, you only see the ink, only the existence there. Wujud al-ashya, that's what you see. And then in BAQA, which is where we are now, in BAQA, you are able to see the words and the ink at the same time. Okay, that's the most complete level. You have a comprehensive view of the world. The words don't prevent you from seeing the ink. The ink doesn't prevent you from seeing the words. So that's a beautiful way that Haydar Amali actually explains these different stages. Okay, so that's the second thing that I wanted to cover. That's FANA and BAQA. And again, we will talk about how these stages relate to Salah itself. And then the third topic is about the tajalliyat. Okay, now these are different ways that Allah reveals himself. Okay, tajalli is a term, terminology from the Quran itself, right? You can see the ayah I have. He uses it in many places, but there's an ayah that I put on this slide. فَلَمَّا تَجَلَّى رَبَّهُ لِلْجَبَلِ جَعَلَهُ دَكًّا وَخَرَّ مُوسَى صَعِقًا. Okay, this is a tajalli that happens. Allah reveals himself, and it has a certain effect on the person. Okay, and so there are different types of tajalli which we can understand and can experience. And so the summary of that is shown here. We start at the simplest level and go into the more deep levels. At the surface level is tajalli al-fi'li, okay, manifestation through actions. When this happens, this type of tajalli, essentially, you know, the way that we see the world working, we see cause and effect, right? Allah wa ma'lul. We know that there are asbab, right? The world works through asbab. We know that Allah is everything, but he works through asbab, right? That's what we all say. We know that. Well, when you get to the stage of tajalli al-fi'li, those asbab don't exist for you anymore. You can see directly the actions coming directly from Allah, enabled by Allah. You see that there is only one source of all action. And this is corresponds in Salah to the position of qiyam, where while we're standing, this is the stage of tajalli al-fi'li. Okay. The next level, higher, is al-tajalli al-sifati, or al-asma'i. Sifat and asma are the same thing. The asma are asma al-sifat. Okay, so here is manifestation of the attributes. As I mentioned in a previous session, everything that we see is a manifestation of these sifat. You can see Allah manifested in different sifat. We talked about water when we were talking about wudu, and that's an example of Allah revealing himself in the form of rahmah, right? Water is a manifestation of that rahmah, that mercy. So that's an example. But when you get into tajalli sifat, now Allah reveals to you that everything is manifesting his kamalat, his sifat, his asma. And this is what happens in ruku'. Okay, the position of ruku' is associated with tajalli as-sifat. Okay, and then finally, and this is actually the tajalli that happened to Nabi Musa in this ayah, tajalli dhati. Okay, now he reveals his essence, that. And here, when there's a tajalli dhati, nothing else can continue to be there. It is seeing that only one infinite being exists. There is no multiplicity anymore. There's no separateness anymore. It corresponds to FANA. And what happens? وَخَرَّ مُوسَى صَعِقًا. Okay. This is the level of sujood. This is the tajalli that happens in sajda. Okay, so that's another set of ideas. I know there was a lot of material there. We talked about the levels of wujud, al-wahidiyya, ahadiyya, dat. We talked about fana and baqa, and then these three different types of tajalliyat. All of these, we will weave them into Salah in the coming sessions and understand how they are connected. This is a kind of roadmap for it. I won't go through all of these, but I'll just point it out so that you have an idea. I've already described it. In the standing position in qiyam, it's going to be al-tajalli fi'li, ruku' is the sifati, sajda is dhati, and then in the sajda is where you reach FANA, and then coming out of sajda, we will reach BAQA. Okay, but we will go through each of these steps, inshallah, in the sessions ahead. But I think I've bombarded you with a lot of information already today, so I'll stop there. Thank you.